was trying to say with Brad Livingston here, I'd love to hear Renee play that anyhow. She balked and balked and balked, but played it. And we appreciate that. Brad's not the only loyal American here, is he? We're all excited and interested in that music. Tough sometimes to separate myself from being an American and a Christian, because I get to thinking they're all rolled together. They're really not, but God has blessed our country. God has used us to reach around the world, and so somewhere in there lies the truth, and so we get excited about that. Amen. And I'm excited about today. We have several that are out and about doing their thing, which will be the case in summertime, whether I like it or not. Right? You're going to go whether I like it or not. Everybody say amen. Brother Gary and Paul are going off to Tucson tomorrow. Is that right? How disgusting. And without me. We wish them well. The good thing is they're going off on Monday and coming back on Saturday. Friday. Oh, you can't get any better than that. So there's no missing of the boat going on. We appreciate that. Yes, the baccalaureate is Wednesday. A few of us need to help drag some tables out so they're set up. Our lone senior is gone today. Our baccalaureate speaker is gone today. But you're here. And we will be on tape. This tape's quite the thing. It goes beyond we here in Belt. And Taylor even got to see himself on tape, didn't you, Taylor? He said, would you tell me it wasn't as bad as you thought? Yeah, well, it's quite confronting to see oneself and hear oneself and find yourself saying, I wish I hadn't said this, I wish I hadn't done that, but that'd be the case. When I was a younger lad, I lived 10 different neighborhoods in Great Falls. At one time I lived, in Riverview, but my Saturday night consisted of watching Lawrence Walk, which I didn't really care for, and Gunsmoke, and then if we were really good, Paladin. Anybody remember Paladin? What a guy, huh? My mother didn't think he was too Christian, so we didn't always get to see that. But after that, it was it was take a bath, and then it was into your room and polish your shoes for church. Boy, talk about the old days, huh? Do you know, when I knew that our retired Brigadier General was coming, you know what I was doing last night? Check him out, huh? I went over and over, and I saw that. That's good. I'm on top. I'm on top. I can hardly see straight here. But what's with this spit shine stuff? Who invented that? Is that really something people do? Is it you really spit and then it gets better? Well, I'll be switched. I'm not sure. I tried that. Kind of a mess going on. 25 years ago and almost 2 months was the last time Brad and I were together. 25 years ago we were together in a little church in north side of Great Falls, and going good, and then it hit some rough water. How many ever heard of churches hitting rough water? Occasionally. But I cannot tell you what a joy it is to have this young man back here. I know he looks like he's my son. He's actually just was a sophomore at, sure, she's gone. Every time I want to rub it in, she's gone. He's a sophomore at CMR when I was a senior, even though he looks much younger. And came up to the ranks, if I remember right, we buried your father and developed a relationship. And I saw Brad from a distance, didn't quite know who he was, except his hair was never out of place. That was irritating. You know what I'm saying? Like, never. And the more I got to watch Brad and his wife, watch what happened in his life, he's going to tell you he doesn't like titles. I mean, he's got titles coming out of his, never mind. I was trying to think of that. You were the administrator of disaster and emergency services or something, state of Montana, head of the Chamber of Commerce in Great Falls. Retired brigadier, used to run all the jets up there and went off to Helena where they just sit down and drink coffee, I understand. So it was quite the deal. But what touches my heart is genuine friendship. Genuine friendship, genuine humility, genuine leadership. What we're trying to project to our fellowship is that, yes, we're a fellowship here, but we are we are part of the bigger picture of the kingdom of God. We have friends and relatives that come to our fellowship here and strengthen us, and minister to us from all around the state of, well, Montana and other places. And I want you to feel that you are connected to all of these ministries, including my brother Brad, who's here today just to share his heart. He doesn't need a pulpit, he doesn't need a microphone, he just needs to be turned loose, and I'm going to do that at this very time. However, I know he won't like this, but would you stand just for a minute and let's welcome Brad Livingston.
I told Mark I'm a walker and a talker, so I'll move this over here. So let me just tell you who I am. I'm Brad Livingston, the son of Wayne and Myrna Livingston, husband of Diane Livingston, and my son is TJ. And Mark is right. You know, man gives us a lot of titles, but ultimately what the title matters is when we go to heaven. And so I've been thinking about what am I supposed to share with you today. And I'm very aware that man can give you a message, but then God will give you a better message. And so while I'm talking, please pray that the words that I have to say isn't necessarily mine, but what God wants me to share with you. And so I really do believe He wants me to start at the beginning. So I started out as a child in Great Falls, Montana. And I would say for the first 10 years, life was very normal for me. You know, basically I grew up in a household that had both parents at home, in a nice neighborhood, and we got to do a lot of things that kids in that era did. Ride our bikes everywhere in Great Falls. No cell phone, no checking in on it and stuff. You just had to be home by 5 o'clock for dinner. And it was good life. But then, candidly, when I was in 8th grade, my father, drinking got a little too much, and it ended up, he left the house for a while. And so, as an 8th grader, it was devastating. I mean, I got to admit that. But here's what I'm going to talk about: that God puts paths, forks in the road in front of us. And so, at that particular time, I probably was more receptive to an intermale's relationship in my life. And so, at school, actually, a classmate of mine says, "Hey, want to come to Grace Baptist this week? There's a special we're having there, something." And I thought about it, and initially I said yes, and then later I thought, I don't really want to go, but if there's one thing I learned early in my life, that when you give somebody your word, you need to follow through with it. And so the conviction of God was probably very strong in that moment, and so I ended up showing up at Grace Baptist, heard the call, went forward, and accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. So that's a fork in the road. My father leaves. How was that going to play out? God put this young man in my life with his father, and came to know the Lord. And so, as we started my journey, and things again kind of shut down in the household, my father returned back. As a junior, it happened again. And so, as a junior, and I was talking to Emily about, do you know what you want to do? And when you're in high school, it's still a struggle. What am I going to do? What am I going to do when I grow up? What am I going to be? And so, senior year, my mom and my uncle.
What school were you at?
The CMR. The CMR.
I'm sorry, I just checked.
And indicated that he might be interested in this thing called the Montana Air National Guard. Well, remember, this is 72. This is after Vietnam, or Vietnam was wrapping up. The military wasn't necessarily, a lot of high school kids, the coolest thing to join. So I went up, took the test in June after I graduated, and then said, no thanks. And I had some graduation money, and I had a job at a drugstore in Great Falls, and I thought, well, this will be kind of fun just to have a good time this summer. And I really did. I had a good time. Great job. Had to show up at work at noon, work till 9, get off, cruise the drag in Great Falls, sleep in, and the life of a graduated senior was pretty good. Well, once again, God enters my life and brings this young lady that I eventually married. And I met her, of all places, cruising the drag. And so that fall, I decided, well, if I am going to be eventually marrying this young lady, I'd probably better have a better job than working in a drugstore. So I joined the Montana Air National Guard in January of 1973. If you do the math, I was only 10 years of age at that time. And thought, well, I'll only be here 6 years, and then I'll get out and I'll go do something else. Remarkable what the Montana Air National Guard did for me and did for many other individuals. It is one of the unbelievable organizations in this nation, and took this raw individual, me, and many others, and turned us into maybe something down the line. So the first 6 years I was an enlisted member in the organization. And again, Diane and I got married in 75. Life was pretty good. Candidly, I was pretty comfortable in the role that I had. And I had an opportunity for a promotion to E6 in the military, and the wing commander denied that, saying that I was not mature enough. He was right. But of course, you know, this isn't one of those forks in the road that God put in there and goes, okay, so thank you for the counsel. Sometimes you got to hear bad things, you know, not all the good things. Ironically, a few months later, the director of personnel position came open at the Air National Guard. It was a commissioned officer position, and I had not gone to college. And the last day that the job was open, this gentleman, who I owe a lot to, he was a senior NCO in our jet engine shop, came over to visit me. I was working in the training office. After we concluded our business, he says, hey, young man, you gonna apply for that job? And I said, oh, senior, I can't apply for that job. I don't have a college degree. I'm not qualified for it. And as he went out the door, he goes, you're right, you won't be able to get that job if you don't apply. Now, he didn't know me. I didn't particularly know him. But that comment is not an accident. God put in something in him to say that. So I quickly put together my worst resume I ever had, and God was there, and I was selected for this commissioned officer position. Again, just a few months before that, the same wing commander said, you're not ready for tech sergeant, but we'll go ahead and make you a second lieutenant. And so, yeah, tells you a little something about that, doesn't it? And so it was given an assignment of a personnel office that was not in the best of shape. And I think that God has put in me an ability to take broken organizations and help them get back on track again. And that was my first 10 years in the military, was going from section to section and working with the individuals and helping them put their act together again, for no better term. Ironically, in that same decade of the 80s, I happened to run into this church called Calvary and started attending this church, and met this gentleman to my left, your right, and formed a relationship of that. Now, I will tell you, in this area, you all know the 4 H's, right? I want to give you something that I try to keep in my mind, the 4 F's. Faith, family, friends, and then finances. And I will tell you through this testimony, I have not always been true to my faith, and oftentimes not even been putting my family and my friends at first. Candidly, a lot of times it was finances, it was the career, that was important to me. And so in the 80s, it was a very busy time for me because I had to go get my college degree. They were going to make sure that that was done. So working full-time, college degree, still having a little fun, but it was a busy time, and then going literally from area to area in the Montana National Guard, working and fixing organizations. My head got a little too big for me, and candidly, I needed some humbling, and so in 1988, I applied for a position. All the other ones I was reassigned to. We want you to go here. So I didn't have to make a decision, God was moving me here. But this one, I don't think I sought God's will. I applied for a position that really was more for a senior officer, not for a junior captain. And the new wing commander said, no, you're not ready for it. While it upset me a little bit at that time, it humbled me also, realizing that, wait a minute, life is a marathon, not a sprint. So take your time, learn what God wants you to do. And so for the next 4 or 5 years, I continued to go from area to area, working with them. And eventually, God did provide that position, but at the right time when I was mature. I will share that two things in the 90s really impacted me. And one was, again, Mark and Associate Pastor Dan Whiteman. My wife and I thought we were never going to have children. Initially, she did not want to have children. And, we'll see, stuff. She was pretty true for the first 10 years and stuff. And yet, she went to work for an organization in Great Falls called QLC, Quality Life Concepts, which helps special needs individuals. And what she saw, that what God showed her, the love of a parent, it changed her heart. And I'll just leave it as that. It was just remarkable that, again, another path, another fork in the road, like QLC anywhere else, because God had this all orchestrated. He had it all planned ahead of time. In fact, I'm remiss, some of the verses that we all know, that God already has set our path, our destiny. What we have to do is live God's destiny, not man's destiny. And I've not always been good about that. And as I reflect back, and that's one of the beautiful things that Pastor Mark does to me, he makes me think back. And so this whole last couple of weeks has been about who in my life, what events in my life, and actually, in some cases, gone back and called a couple of individuals, and I just want you to know, thank you for what you did in my life. And they go, I don't remember that, but okay, but I sure do. And so we heard that the associate pastor, Dan, had a gift that he could pray for couples to conceive. Well, if you know my wife, she's a very shy individual, and getting her to go in front of the congregation was like unbelievable. But she did, and almost 9 months later, our one and only child was born. And so, I look back again, and so if we had not gone to Calvary, if we had not followed to the hilltop, if we had not done some of these things, then maybe we wouldn't have a child. But God, and I gotta tell you, I am not the best at listening, but it's amazing what He did for me by setting the individuals in my life to do that. And then the other event was going to an Appental. And I'm sure most of you in here know what an Appental, but it's a 2-day retreat at the Ursuline Center, Glenn Krebs. And again, it was actually a lieutenant colonel in the guard invited me, and I go, I'm cool. I got it. I know all the right words and all that good stuff. You gotta come. And okay, once again, made that yes answer, and then later try to get out of it, but you got to keep your word. And so at the end of the Appental, you're asked to pick a verse that you think that represents your time there or what it means to you. And so I'm sitting there going, well, nothing really comes to my mind, so I'll just open up my Bible and take my finger and do this. So let me open this real quickly here. So it's John 12:23. At this time, I'm a lieutenant colonel. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." And that stuck with me for the rest of my life. That I needed to humble myself, that it's not about bread, and that's why, I do dislike my titles, only from the standpoint people think you're something, and I'm telling you who the real Brad is. Those were man-made titles. But the real Brad is just like anyone else in this room, with struggles, trying to get through life, trying to figure out where you need to go. But after that verse in 1974, I felt that God was, humble yourself. I would talk to my airmen every time I stood up, the golden rule, practice the golden rule, treat each other with respect and dignity. And we can go a long ways in the military, in our congregations, in our country, if we learn just to treat each other with respect and dignity. And so I did get that job that I was talking about, and I thought I had the ultimate job, and it was a pretty cool job. And then 3 wise men came from Helena and knocked on my door. The first individual said, and right after 9/11, matter of fact, that the Adjutant General, which is the Commanding General of the Montana National Guard of the state, wants you to come down and work for him. And I said, well, I don't have that call from God yet. And I knew he was a believer too, so I'm not sure if I was being totally honest on that aspect, but I said, I really like what I'm doing. Family, my wife's mom, still alive, on and on. I prefer to stay here. Thank you very much. A few months later, the second wise man came and said the same pitch. And I go, I pray about it. I just don't get that feeling. And so I appreciate it if you just share with the Adjutant General. If I could stay here, I'd love that. And then Diane's mom passed away. And so the third wise man came a couple of months later and says, hey, same pitch. And I go, and he goes, you don't tell the Adjutant General no 3 times. I said, I do believe I do have a piece about it, that Diane's mom has passed away. And so from that aspect, so in 2003, we packed up and went to Helena. It's not a great distance, but nevertheless, it was 90 miles that we didn't travel very often to see family and friends. But on the other hand, it gave me an opportunity as a father and a husband to do a better job. So the position I had, I made this choice. We had no friends in Helena. Could not have any friends because I was selecting the staff for the Adjutant General. So any friendship that I had would be perceived as, bias or, favoritism or things of that nature. So I'd go to work at Old Dark 30, that's military talk. Go home at Old Dark after that. But then the rest of the time was with my wife and my son and walking in Mount Helena and stuff. And I think, again, from a God point of view, I needed that because Great Falls had so many distractions for me, friends, family, all the rest of the stuff. This gave us a chance as a couple and a son, father, to develop a stronger relationship. And that carried me through until 2008 when they finally said, okay, we appreciate you wanting to live here, but we want to go home. We want to go back to Great Falls. So we moved back to Great Falls in 2008, and then I drove to Helena every day for 7 years after that. Because I love the job. I love the National Guard, I love the men and women, and what I had an opportunity in Helena to actually become the Army's Chief of Staff. I ended up not only the Air Guard, but the Army National Guard's Chief of Staff, and 3,500 soldiers and airmen throughout the state were my children. And that's the kind of way I saw it, is that, trying to help them in any way. And another God thing I thought was quite remarkable or reflecting is at Fort Harrison, there's a chapel. Chapel in name, not necessarily in attendance. And the chaplain came to visit me early on when I was down there and said, tell me a little bit about you. And I said, well, I'm a believer, and blah, blah, blah. And so how come I don't see a chapel? And I go, well, because you have it at 9 o'clock on Sundays. And honestly, that's prime training time. Every hour that a guardsman's at drill, that weekend, we gotta be doing training. And I said, to tell you what, you do it at 7:30, and I will be there. And he says, I'll change it to 7:30. And because I was the senior officer short of the Adjutant General, my attendance at chapel started bringing these hardcore Army colonels and lieutenant colonels and majors to church. And that transformation of that period of time. And some of them were believers, but we all got out of the habit of making excuses that, well, I don't have time for church this time and stuff. And I just look back, I'd get there, show up, and I'd be one of the first at the front there, and you look back and you go, wow. And then one day, the Adjutant General showed up, and he started attending. So again, God just opens up. Would I have done it on my own? Maybe not. But the chaplain comes over, puts out a challenge. I counter with a time change, and here we go. So when I did leave the National Guard, I have to admit there was a little bit of sadness about, now what do I do, Alfie? And I had the opportunity a couple months later. I don't sit well in Type A, firstborn, and so I have a tendency of wanting to be active and doing stuff. And I do reflect that I think that you spend a third of your life learning, and I think you spend the next part of your life earning, and then the last part of your life is serving. And so I think that's the mission I'm on right now, that God has me, is serving. And so I did spend a year, as Mark indicated, as the administrator for emergency management for the state of Montana. Cool job, 56 counties, 7 tribal nations. I tell the story, if you want to have a tough job, try to get all those counties and all those tribal nations to agree upon anything. And, but we did. 1 year later, we wrote the first comprehensive state emergency management plan. And why? The golden rule. I'd walk in every meeting and look at people, I'm going to treat them as an equal, treat them with respect, Native Americans, small counties, little counties, big counties, and it worked. And I don't have to tell you that. It's biblical. God tells us to do that. That's really what life is all about. And then I did take a short moment of insanity and try to run for public office in Great Falls, and I'm kind of glad I didn't get elected, but it sure gave me appreciation of what's going on in the community. And that's my last part of this, is that we have a lot of needs in our country. We have a lot of needs in our state, in our communities. A lot of hurting people. And churches are, filling the gap, but there's a lot of other organizations out there trying to do the same thing. The Rescue Mission in Great Falls, what a wonderful, wonderful organization, what they do. And this building of the Cameron facility and for families is pretty awesome. But we as a country have got to address and tackle the addiction issue. It's huge. The number of young men and women in schools right now that are homeless would just frighten you. And I'll tell you a figure, Great Falls is 350 kids who are homeless and yet trying to go through school. They're couch surfing, friends, maybe an aunt or something of that nature. The school district is feeding kids in the summertime because the parents are absent, from doing that. It just crushes your heart. And so obviously we pray, for our community and for those individuals. And I was naive, and I really meant that. I had this nice job and a nice home. And I got in the car every day and drove to that nice gated community called a military facility, where everybody looked like me, and talked like me, and acted like me. And then you get out in the real world and you go, wow. And so while a lot of people in this nation are still it's humbling for us that, thank the military, There's a lot of other people out there, like first responders and others, that we ought to be thanking too. Social workers, our teachers are under attack in respect to not only just from what they have to do and the pay and they have to be the parents of a lot of these children nowadays. And they need our prayers and they need our lifting up. For the first time in many, many years, Great Falls Public Schools weren't able to fill all their school or their teacher positions, and they usually had a waiting list. And some of that at the end is just the expectation of people about what teachers should be doing, when in fact we should have a greater expectation of what parents ought to be doing. So I thank you for allowing me to kind of share the story, and the message there is that there are people in your life, at the end of the day, your life, you got to look back and go, it wasn't me. It was God and a bunch of other individuals that He put in our life. But in turn, what's my purpose? To be that same bridge to a lot of other individuals, to be to Emily. You can do it, Emily. You got this and stuff. And I smiled because she was so old today. Most people well, that's an old dude over there. I'm not going to go talk to him and stuff, something like that. That she came up and introduced herself, and and then she said, "What's your name?" Well, apologize, Emily. I forgot to tell you my name and stuff. So, Emily, I want to do this for you. In the military, you've heard military coin, and I had a commander's coin. And so, when somebody did something really special, you gave this individual a coin. You presented a coin.
Oh, what about? But I didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. And on the front side was my two ranks. The first rank I had as a young airman, and the last rank when I left as a senior airman. And then it's got the seal of the state of Montana. So, Emily, you have to stand, and we have to shake hands. And there you go. So thank you very much. So, you have to carry that all the time, because if we should come upon each other again, the deal is we take out our coin and we clink it on something. And if you don't have your coin and I do that, you have to buy me my favorite beverage, or I have to buy you your favorite beverage. But that's the military tradition on that. Again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, because I got more out of this today than I think you probably did, because it gave me a chance to go back and reflect. You're running at a high pace in life. and you sometimes don't appreciate those individuals who meant something in your life. And I think honestly, we should take some time every once in a while and just say, hey, thank you. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for what you've done in my life or somebody else's life. Because I'm hoping there are other people out there for my son, your sons and daughters, and that we as a country can return back to being civil and practicing the golden rule. Thanks again.
Terrible tear-jerking way to end this. Stay here for a minute, will you, Brad? So good to have him here. Really appreciate his humility and stuff. "25 years ago, he was telling me about stuff in the Pentagon. And we all know the military people have to keep secrets. And they do. My son won't tell me half of what I ask him. But just before he leaves, and I appreciate that. Here's a man who knows what's happening in the world. Not just Helena. He knows what's happening around the world. And I just want to give, just before we go, and keep playing, Renee, that's good, just a chance for one or two questions. You have here a remarkable young man who knows the world that we're living in. I'm just sitting there and the Lord said, let him ask a couple questions. So, quickly, of a man who knows what's happening in the world, what to the degree he can answer you, what would your question be? Question number one, quickly. Paula?
What do you think is happening right now in Israel with Russia and Iran?
We all know that we need to be praying for Israel. I had the opportunity to go there about 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, Israel has. Actually, Israel has a version of the National Guard there also, so we had an opportunity to go over and trade notes, I guess, for no better term. They're much more intense than, say, your local National Guard, because they have a reason. You think about, literally, Israel from all its enemies is from Great Falls to the Canadian border. And so they got a short time in respect to respond, whatever that might be. They also, what I love about them is every individual in that country knows a sense of urgency, and they're all put together. They focus much better than we do in America. With all the distractions that we're doing right now in our own nation, tearing it apart, they don't have time for that. We've got individuals who want to do harm with them. So it's biblical. Iran, Russia, Israel, the rest of the things that go on with that and stuff. But other than that, I've been out for 4 years, so I couldn't, venture. I can venture what's going on, but I sure can't tell you, specifically. But we do need to pray for Israel. And what is the, had the opportunity to go, and some of you probably had the same thing, go to the Wailing Wall, and it's amazing in that small area, the three major religions of this world kind of represent, and they don't get along there. It kind of reflects what's going on in the rest of the world too. So.
Okay, Rio? Change your mind? Okay, question number 2 before we go.
Emily?
I don't have a question, but this was kind of answered prayer. My dad was in the Camp Force, and my sister's in the International Guard. That's why she's not here. She's doing the weekend. But I always thought the Lord didn't want me to join the military. It doesn't make sense. It's like, that's been my whole life. Why would I do that? And this was just kind of like, I'll never have any of those honors. You can do this. And I just feel like it's slow to say, maybe you're not doing that, but I'm just with you.
Sweet.
We can never outguess the Lord, can we?
How remarkable. This is National Guard, isn't it? Weekend, and we have Brad with us today.